One of the problems I found very early on with a lot of my clients in my legal career was access to information. So around January 2020, I just made the decision we're going to focus on global expansion. We're going to build a tech platform. Let's have an interactive database that has tons of information in it on every country in the world. So I just figured at this point, this is the time to hedge the bets. Like the industry, the market is asking for this product. We've had enough customer feedback. We've got product market fit. In 10 years, I want everyone to think, oh, if I need to do anything global, Centuro Global, that's where I go.
Today we have on the podcast Zain Ali, who's a founder and CEO of Centuro Global. When he was a kid, he wanted to be a sports person. He ended up going into law, into IP law in particular, smashing it there, but having an itch where he wanted to do something different still. So he started his company. Off the back of that, he had to make a few pivots, which you'll hear about. And then he's decided to make an app, which is changing the world, especially if you're a company that's looking to expand globally. So he talked through that journey, how he was able to use venture capital, how he was able to build a product despite not having a product background, and then what's been the highlight so far, and what's the vision for the future. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. So Zain, you're now the CEO of Centuro Global, but obviously you didn't start that way. So when you were a kid, what were your ambitions? What did you hope to be one day?
I think I was one of those kids that never really knew what they wanted to do. There were just so many options, and I always found it frustrating that all my friends, they always knew what they wanted to do. I had a lot of Asian friends who were like, I'm going to be a doctor. They're like 10 years old, 8 years old, and they knew they wanted to be a doctor. I mean, for me, I was like, I wanted to be a cricketer, wanted to be a footballer, wanted to be a spy. I used to like writing, so I thought maybe I can be an author, journalist. There were just too many options. And I was like, all right, let me just see where life takes me and I'll figure it out. And I want to do something I'm passionate about. But it was always a frustration because even as I grew older, I did GCSEs, I didn't even know what subjects to pick. Whereas my friends were like, oh, we're doing double maths. I'm going to do physics, chemistry, biology. It was always clear. Whereas for me, it was always uncertain. But I think I've always just had a very intellectually curious mind and I'm just interested in everything. So I didn't want to specialize too early, if that's the right. I don't think I was thinking like that, but kind of keep it all open-minded and have aspirations. I just knew whatever I did, I wanted to do really well. I was always ambitious, wanted to achieve something, but what that was, I don't think I really knew as a kid.
Did you get pressure from the people around you to try and pick earlier?
Fortunately not. I think I was quite fortunate in that sense because obviously you get influenced by people around you. I think I just was interested in everything. And I think everyone who saw me knew that, my parents never had to ask me to do homework. I'd come home, it'd be done, right? No one had to ask me to do anything. I just got stuff done. And that's just been my personality. And like, even with friends, like as a kid growing up, once I think MSN was around at that point, that was before we all had smartphones. People were messaging, asking about homework. Have you done this? Have you done that? They're stressing about revising before exams. I used to get everything done in about an hour once I'm home from school. And then I would chill, I'd relax. And everyone's stressing, I haven't done it. It's been a week, it's due tomorrow. Whereas my mentality was, it's actually good to get it out of the way. Then I can relax and do what I want versus relax and do what I want and then panic and have to do it the other way. So there wasn't really much pressure around me to do anything specific because I think everyone just knew I'd get stuff done.
And what did you end up studying in the end? And why did you pick it?
So I ended up studying history at university, which was a bit of a rogue one for family. My parents have always been quite relaxed with what I do. So not your stereotypical Asian parents who are like, you got to be a doctor, engineer, lawyer. Although my mum did really want me to be a lawyer. She said it throughout. She was like, oh, you'd be a really good lawyer. And the more she said it, the less I wanted to do it. But in the back of my mind, I kind of wanted to do it. But because she was saying it, I was like, maybe I should think about something else. One of those natural things as a kid.
Rebellion. So
I ended up picking history just because I thought it was one of my favorite subjects at school. It literally encompasses everything. Like you can pick what you study at university, what time periods. So I just found it fascinating. And then the skills you get from it, I thought no one realizes this, but they're so transferable, like to law, to any other career. Like you got to have critical thinking. You got to be able to research things. You give your opinion, you make arguments. One of my favorite quotes is from I've forgotten his name. It's embarrassing, but I think it's Carlos Santana or not? No, that's the singer. Santayana. I can't remember who the quote is from.
Yeah.
But he said it was something along the lines of, if you don't know where you've been, you can't know where you're going. So with history is literally everything. It's the state of the world. So if you look at what has happened in the past, why people have done it, where it's taken you to, that's the best foundation for you to then move forward. It kind of comes back to mistakes, right? The best way to grow and learn is by making mistakes because you have that experience. You see what worked, what didn't work, how to improve on it in the future. It's the same with history. You look back, why did certain things happen? Why did certain people have success? Why did they not? And you learn from it and it helps you progress. So that's why I picked history. My grandparents were very confused. They were like, why are you doing that? You should be doing medicine or something like that. But no, that's what I wanted to do. And then I converted to law afterwards. So I did a GDL, conversion course, LPC, got a training contract, and then went down the legal journey.
How did you find that legal journey? Because obviously, like I said, you didn't know what you wanted to do originally. You had the back in mind, maybe I want to do law, but you don't want to do it because your mum was, it's like, am I doing the right choice, or am I just doing it because your mum wanted you to?
Yeah.
But on the actual working in a corporate, in the law environment, did you find an environment where you thrived, or how did you find that experience?
I actually really enjoyed the experience, to be fair. I mean, when I was at university, I was trying to explore different career options. So you go to the career days, you go to open days, you start applying for grad schemes, like everyone's applying to banks and consultancy, Big Four, all this usual stuff. So I started doing the same thing, making all these applications, got invited to interviews, assessment days. And then I was there and I was just like, the subject matter doesn't really interest me. I feel like I'm just here because everyone's here and this is the thing you're supposed to do. Because I haven't taken the medical route or the engineering route. So this is more whatever other subjects you study, you go down this route. So even when I considered law, I was thinking, what am I actually interested in? I'm interested in sport. So sports law would be interesting. I'm interested in, technology, branding, marketing, psychology. So, maybe intellectual property law would be interesting. So those were kind of my thought processes. So I decided to do the GDL, and I would use that as a test bed for, do I actually like law before I fully commit to it? And worst case, I've got a GDL, which is a good thing to have, and it's always good to know the law in life. So that was my kind of thought process. Did the GDL and I actually really loved it, which not many people may agree with because it's a very intense year. It's effectively not a 3-year law degree because you just do the core module, so maybe 2 years of a law degree compressed into 9 months. So it's very intense. I remember the exams. I did it at the College of Law, which is now the University of Law. It was literally back to back every day, 1 weekend gap. So I think it was 9 exams, Monday to Friday. You got the weekend off, and then Monday to Thursday. 3-hour exams, completely different topics, closed book. So you had to memorize all the case law, and there was no time between exams. You're going from land law to criminal law to EU law. It was insane. But I enjoyed it. Applied for training contracts, got into a law firm called Bird & Bird, which are number 1 in the country for sports and IP. So that was kind of my goal. I got the firm I wanted. I didn't, corporate has always been interesting, and now I'm in business. It's even more interesting. But at the time I was thinking, I went to university in 2008. It's when the financial crash happened and everyone's talking about collateralized debt obligations and all these things. And I was just like, I'm more interested in sport and IP, so I'm going to pick that firm. And I managed to get into my top choice firm, and I loved it. It was a great experience.
What did you actually specialize in? So did you do both IP and law, or which one did you go down in the end?
Yeah, so I ended up doing... in the training contract, you spend 6 months in 4 different departments. So I spent a year, so 2 of those stints in IP, so intellectual property, 1 in dispute resolution and 1 in sports. So I kind of got to do everything I wanted to do. And then I had a choice between qualifying into the sports law team or the IP team. Both were kind of competitive, and you kind of throw your hat into the ring. With sports, they only had... It's split in 2. So you've got commercial and then you've got disputes. And I preferred the idea of, fighting a case, going to court, that sort of thing. So I didn't...
What you saw on TV, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they only had an availability in the commercial side. So I was umming and ahhing about that. Whereas with IP, it was, disputes. You're fighting against IP infringements and things. So I picked IP, qualified into that department.
And when did the idea for starting your own thing come into this, right? So you're working in law, obviously a prestigious job, working in the city. You tell people you're a lawyer. People are like, okay, yeah, you're doing well in life. But then you had this itch to do something on the side.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Because originally Centuro Global was very different to what it is today.
I think, going back to what I said earlier, as a kid, I was just interested in so many things. And I've always been curious. Like, I love meeting new people. I love traveling. I love new cultures. Even from a professional capacity, I just like to constantly be growing, and like personal development, I think, is crucial. And I'm one of those people who always feels like, doesn't matter how much I achieve, how much I learn, I still feel like I know nothing, because there's so much more to learn and so much more to grow. And it's easy to forget that, because when I talk to people and I start giving people, ask me questions, they ask for advice, and I come out with all this advice and I was like, oh, maybe I do know what I'm talking about. But in my day to day, I'm just thinking of everything else I need to learn and grow. So when I was working in law, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great, but there was more I wanted to do. And I got the seed of the idea for Centuro, because when I was doing my training contract, I was working in different departments, and I had a mixture of clients who were kind of scale up tech companies and large multinational corporates. And we were doing global, because obviously the firm I worked for was international. There were like 30 odd offices around the world. And I ended up doing a few cases where I was coordinating globally. So I would work with our offices in different countries. I'd work with other law firms where we don't have an office in that country, or where we need a certain specialism. And I kind of saw the struggles of, international business. It doesn't matter if you're a Coca-Cola or a Disney, if you're huge, or if you're, an Uber in 2012 that wants to launch in London and Paris for the first time, you're only in Silicon Valley, early on in that journey, they all had the same challenges. And I was like coordinating a lot of legal stuff, but then there were tax issues, there were immigration issues, employment law, commercial law, IP. There were just so many elements to it. And I was working out of Excel, and I worked at a firm that markets itself as being, one of the top firms globally for tech. And we were using Excel. And I just thought there's got to be a better way of doing this. So I had that idea in the back of my mind. I tried to discuss some of it with some of the partners at the firm. They were like, oh, some of these ideas sound great. I always had random ideas. Even for a client pitch, I was invited to a meeting where we're thinking we're going to go pitch this large video games company. And I had an idea to do a magic trick in the pitch, tell a story with a Rubik's Cube and show how we would solve all their problems. And like literally like that, flick the Rubik's Cube in the air, it's solved. And it was a bit quirky, it's a bit out there. Obviously, everyone laughed at me. I thought it was a great idea. They didn't want me to do it. But I had all these random ideas and things I wanted to do. And I had the idea for the business and I just had an itch. And I was like, okay, I could stay here. I could, hopefully become a partner one day and have that comfortable life. But you're working hard. I wasn't working the longest hours in the world, but you're working long hours. It can be intense. When you're going to court, you're working crazy hours for the months leading up. Then you get kind of slightly more manageable time. I figured if I'm going to run a business, I'm going to work crazy intense hours. I'm in control of my own kind of destiny. And I just had an itch that I wanted to scratch. So that's what kind of made me take the leap. And I guess going back to my childhood, my parents have both been entrepreneurs as well. So growing up as a kid, I'd be in the lounge. I'm like 6, 7 years old. And, my dad's trying to design a website on the computer. I'd go in the room and I'd sit there and I'd watch him and I'd try and help him. And he'd ask me for advice on how it looks and a logo. They'd create a logo and they set up their own business. And I watched that from a young age. And I watched them literally start this business in the garage. And then they grew and scaled and turned that business into a global business with 50 offices around the world. So I watched my parents start from literally scratch. And I went on that journey with them when they rebranded, when they did all these things. And they really made it after I went to university. So during that period, I kind of just saw that growth and they always encouraged me to, try and work for yourself if you can in the future. So I think that also played a big part.
With your parents having done that, did you almost feel more pressure to succeed when you did go? Because it's like, it's one thing if you're trying to fight against somebody else and say, hey, I can do this and nobody else can. But when your parents have done that, then it's like, well, now if I go and do my own thing, I've got to live up to that high standard. How is that for you when you're good?
It's a good question. I guess I've never really thought about it like that. I think my philosophy in life is always just to do the best I can. I'm very ambitious. I've seen my parents succeed. I know what they've been able to achieve. There is an element, I guess, in the subconscious of like, can I live up to that because they've done so well? And it's probably even more pressure because I have them there as mentors so I can learn from them and I should be able to take that and do my own thing. But I try not to let that bother me. I just try and do what I need to do. I want to be my own person, want to be my own man, create my own business. I just kind of try and focus on that. I think pressure is also good. So as long as it doesn't overwhelm you and you take it the wrong way, you can sometimes use that as fuel to keep you going and think, look, I need to do this. I need to do it really well. As long as I do a good job, I'm not trying to compare what I'm doing. They set up a traditional services business. I'm trying to build a tech SaaS company, which is related to services as well. So it's even more difficult. I'm trying to productize professional services, which has never successfully really been done befall. So it's a tall order, but it's something that I'm kind of setting out to do. So I think I just take that pressure and use it as fuel.
So in that first period of you working for yourself now, what was the initial idea? Like what was your initial strategy to try and grow this out?
So the original idea was at Bird & Bird, we worked with the Just Eat Accelerator program. And one of my friends who was in the corporate department, he was kind of, leading from the front on that kind of initiative. And we'd give pro bono, like free legal advice to some of the startups on the program. So he got a few of us in different departments to contribute. So he was doing some of the corporate stuff, hoping he can help them with a fundraise. Someone in the employment team would come in. I was from the IP, so I would give trademark advice. How do you register your trademark, protect your brand, and so on. So I started working with a variety of different startups. And they all had a million questions. And they were like, how do we do this? How do we do that? How do we, beyond fundraising, like, how do we set up a company properly? If we want to set up in another country, how does it affect our corporate structure, the trademarks? Can you introduce me to investors? Can you introduce me to someone in this country? And I started researching it. And obviously there are accelerator programs. There's very few that have a really good reputation. They really help companies. But then there's tons that people have set up where it's kind of a mixed bag, I guess. So I was looking at it. And at the time there was nothing online. And I was trying to think, there's entrepreneurs all over the world, or there's people with talent all over the world that might want to do something but don't have access to the resources to do it. You've got people I won't name any particular countries, but literally there's so many countries where they just don't have the access you would get in London or in New York or in Silicon Valley or Berlin, for example. So I was thinking, why don't we create an online platform where, I can build this network and we can create it in layers. So when you're a seed company, this is the support you need. So we built a roadmap. We were like, these are all the steps a successful seed company takes. These are the things you need to do from a legal perspective, a compliance perspective, a networking perspective, and then so on all the way through to, expanding globally to, exit. So that was the original vision, build this online kind of portal and create a network, a community, build an app where people can interact and, just help anyone anywhere in the world succeed. But that's a huge undertaking. So I spent a year doing that, and it was just overwhelming how much work was involved, and it didn't even make sense to try and do everything at once. So we thought, okay, we could start with seed, but seed stage companies, they need the most support. The majority of them sadly fail, and none of them want to pay for anything. So from a business perspective and a commercial perspective, whilst it sounds nice, it just wasn't really effective. And I looked at my career and I was like, okay, I've been helping companies at the global expansion stage or international cross-border stage. And if you look at startups, Series A, B onwards, they've got money to expand. You look at multinational enterprises, they're doing global cross-border business every day. So I thought it makes sense to just focus. So around January 2020, I just made the decision, we're going to focus on global expansion. We're going to build a tech platform that solves some key problems. So if you're a company that already has global operations or you're expanding for the first time, there's a ton of information you need to know, right? It takes weeks to book in a meeting with a lawyer, even to find the right lawyer or accountant. Do I need a lawyer? Do I need an accountant? Do I need tax advice? You don't even know what you don't know, right? And it gets so confusing. And even if you've done it before in one country, you've expanded to the US, which has so many complexities, that's completely different to expanding into Japan, So just because you've done it once doesn't mean you can take that experience and easily do it again. So one of the problems I found very early on with a lot of my clients in my legal career was access to information. We would spend weeks creating reports, 100-page report, 50-page report. The front page of the report says, we advise you don't do this, but you can, and here's the if, buts, and maybes. And then there's 100 pages, and the client's like, well, I don't know what to do with this. It doesn't really help me with my commercial goals, and I've just paid 10 grand for all those legal hours. So I thought, let's build a platform. Let's have an interactive database that has tons of information in it on every country in the world, where people can go in, they can click, they can ask questions. We'll build AI in. This is all conceptual at the time. It will start to give advice, all the advice that, knowledge I've gathered. I'm going to get knowledge from lawyers around the world. I'm going to build up a network. They're going to plug their knowledge in, and we're going to have this AI tool that spits out information. That was kind of the vision early on. And then companies would take that, plan their international expansion, and then when they wanted services, they could request it on the platform. So then they could track everything in one system. So it's not just emails, like hundreds of different providers, different CRMs that each individual provider has. It's one place. You've got a dashboard. What are we doing in Germany? What are we doing in Spain? We're setting up an entity in Spain. We're going to send our founders there. We're going to send a team of 5. We've got visa applications to sort out immigration stuff, work permits. You can just track everything in one system. And then even those providers, if you give them permission, they can see the different parts of the journey that they're waiting on, they're dependent on. You just upload documents once. It's secure. It's more secure than email. And you don't have to have repeatedly send documents to hundreds of vendors around the world. It's all in one system. So that was kind of the vision. And at the start, it was like, well, how do we build this? That was the tricky part. And this was before, LLMs and ChatGPT. So we just got tons of information, created like an interactive database, a bit like Wikipedia, but we made it UX was always important to me in UI. And I wanted everything to visually look really good and easy for people to use. So that was a big undertaking in itself. We built this amazing database. You could pick a country in the world on a map or select it from a drop down. It gives you country facts. It gives you how do you set up an entity, compares different options. And it just helped people make decisions very quickly. And then last year, obviously ChatGPT came out. And at first, people were asking me questions. Oh, is this going to, take away the need for your business? Or that element of your business or your platform. And I was like, no, this is brilliant. This is what I've been waiting for, because ultimately the tool does one thing, but it's the data and the knowledge that people need. And ChatGPT has data from the internet and from various sources and books and so on, but it hasn't been trained specifically for what we're doing. So that this technology enables so many businesses to use it with their own knowledge. So with tax, legal, we can use that to our advantage. So actually, it's just really helped us this year.
It's interesting that journey you've had there, right? From going from your original idea to then pivoting what you're doing today. And I think one of the key points for the audience there too is a little bit about what people might want, right? There's a difference between what people want versus what they'll pay for. Because like you said, a lot of seed stage companies would want what you were building, but they wouldn't actually be able to afford it. And I think that's quite a danger that people get into. It's like they survey people, would you want this? Rather than would you pay for this? And it's two different elements. And you can't, if you're building something that people want, but people won't pay for, you don't have a business. And that's why the pivot towards the large companies you said there makes so much sense. And like I said about building this now, right? So it's first of all, okay, you had your initial database, but how did you actually go about like that product side of things, right? Because you had a law background and you said you're curious in different things, but like to build an app from the idea to getting to that stage, how did you go about that? Like who did you get people on board? How did you find the right people to help you do that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I don't have any tech background. So yeah, I started reaching out to my network, trying to get introductions. And I wanted to build a website as well, obviously, because the look and feel was really important to me. I thought, let me find a designer who can help with this. So I explained the vision of the company to him, explained things I liked, and then he got really into it. And he started creating a mind map. He was like, to create your website, I need to know your business inside out. So we built this mind map. We sat in a room for about 3 days, just mapping everything out. And then he was like, I can help you design the app as well. I was like, oh, brilliant. So he started getting involved with not just the website, but let's start creating designs for an app. Let's mock some screens up and create some design files, XD files, and see how this can look and make it interactive. So that was a pretty cool journey. And then he has a lot of technical knowledge. So I had all the ideas and he would map them out. And then he would say, we could do this or we could do that. And he was really, really helpful from the technical side of things, because I always said, this is the end goal. This is what I want to achieve. This is what I want it to look like. But how do we do it? And that was the bit I was missing. So having him come in quite early on was pivotal. And he's gone and built the tech team for us.
It's interesting as well, because when you started out, you didn't necessarily think it would be a venture scale business and be as global as it is today. So how is that adjustment in your thinking too, right? Because you didn't start out this business and think, okay, I need to go and raise venture capital, I need to go and do this. And I think many people that I've talked to as well, venture capital is something that comes later in their journey, where when they first quit their job, it's not something they ever think about. So when did you think, actually, what I need here is I need support, I need that investment from that side of the world?
Yeah, so I think running a venture business is very different to a standard business. So the whole purpose of venture is to invest in taking a risk, right? So you need to build something. You can't sell something until you've got a product to sell. And to build it costs money. So if you don't have any money, how do you build something? So when I started the business, it was more advisory initially. So I thought I can, sell consultancy services, use that to test the market. If people are interested, I can, get estimates. How much did it take to build a basic platform, and just use the revenue to build it. But then as we grew, we started focusing on this global expansion, and then the ideas were just huge. And it was like, we can build all these tools. We want to build AI. I wanted to create modules. I don't know if a lot of your listeners use HubSpot or anything, but HubSpot is a CRM, and you've got functionality for sales, for marketing, for data, for just collecting everything. And there's different purposes for it. So I thought, why don't we create something similar for global expansion? So for the visa immigration side, there's a suite of tools. There's a suite of tools for business incorporation and so on, tax and whatnot. So to build something like that takes a lot of money, and you need funding to really scale it. And we bootstrapped, and we built a really solid platform, in my humble opinion, without any funding. And we got to this stage where we thought, people would say to us, oh, how much money have you raised? And we're like, we haven't raised anything. And they're like, well, how did you build this? And it was like, well, it was through revenue. And, I didn't pay myself a salary for a good couple of years. I was in the privileged position of being a lawyer, and I had savings, and I made the decision, I can live off of these for X period of time, which meant I could take that risk. I didn't have a family at the time, kids or anything. So we got to this position, and then I just figured we've built something good, but to really scale it, to really go to market in a big way, we need to hire really good people. And, the salaries were crazy high in the past couple of years. Finding talent's been difficult. So I just figured, if we want to scale this product the way we want to do it, customers were giving feedback. We want this feature, we want that feature. And we couldn't do anything quick enough. Everything was slow from a product development perspective. So I just figured at this point, this is the time to hedge the bets. Like, the industry, the market is asking for this product. We've had enough customer feedback. We've got product market fit in the sense of people using it and paying for it. But we just don't have the resources to scale it. So that was the moment where I thought, okay, let's start thinking about fundraising, speaking to VCs, trying to do that. But obviously the timing of that was 2022 when funding kind of came to a halt effectively.
And was it a bit easier considering you already built a platform, you already had customer demand, Did the conversation with VCs go as you expected, or was it harder than you expected?
It was probably easier than I expected in a lot of ways. What was difficult was what we had sold was services where people would use the platform to consume those services. So we hadn't sold any subscriptions, or we had, but not a significant amount. And they were all over the place. We didn't have a clear pricing, and we were just testing it. What are people willing to pay and so on? So the biggest roadblock I had with VCs was recurring revenue versus services revenue. So it's like if you have a subscription, you're getting money every month. It's guaranteed. There's a contract. You pay Netflix £12 a month. And let's say it was for a year that you're locked in. You know you're getting £12 a month. With services, somebody might set up a company in January and they'll pay you 10K. They might, or whatever the amount is, and they might do nothing for another 4 months and they might ask for a visa. So there's no guarantee of revenue. So even though you're going to make more money from all the services than you would from a £10 a month subscription, investors prefer the confidence of recurring revenue. So our challenge was at the time that we had repeat revenue. So we had clients who were consuming every month and we knew what they were going to purchase, and it was effectively recurring revenue. But because it wasn't, contracted, this is the minimum amount every month. That was my biggest roadblock with VCs, because when you're pitching, the more traction you have, the more convincing. You need to show VCs, one, that there's a huge market size opportunity, because if you look at it as a founder, you're taking a risk to set up a business. If you're going to take funding, there has to be a minimum 3, 5, 10x return. Otherwise, you're just burning money for nothing. So from a VC perspective, they also raise money. They raise it from limited partners. They have targets to hit, and their portfolio companies have to hit these numbers. If you don't show the opportunity to hit those numbers, then it's not even worth them looking at it. Then from a traction perspective, you need to show that depending on what stage you are, whether it's pre-seed, seed, Series A, and so on, there's certain elements of traction. So we showed, like you say, we've built a platform, we've got customers, we've got revenue. So that was a massive advantage. And then it was just shifting the mindset or demonstrating how we have a plan to turn this into recurring revenue. We have a plan for this to be a really scalable SaaS platform. And I think that was the key to unlocking a lot of good investor discussions.
So you're obviously able to raise that money, and you've gone on to raise a seed round recently as well. Could you talk a bit about what your traction is in today?
Yeah, so we closed the seed round in March of this year, which was a process. It was about 3, 4, 5 months of due diligence, which is understandable in the current climate. But what we've done since closing the funding is really try and scale the team, scale the product. And from a traction perspective, we've onboarded, a wide variety of clients now. When you first start a company, to get an enterprise corporate client on is very difficult. There's a lengthy procurement process. You have to have a certain amount of revenue, reputation, and big companies don't like to take risk. And they tend to use traditional providers, old stuffy providers, just because they know it's reliable. It ticks the boxes, right? Internally, individuals may not want to use that provider. They might want a modern forward-thinking tech solution for whatever it is, but you have to go through a procurement process. So we've been around for about 4 years now as a company, 3.5 years, 4 years. And that longevity, even though it's not that long in the grand scheme of things, but we've got to a point now where we've been around long enough, our accounts are good enough to start to win corporate clients. So we've started winning quite a few corporate clients this year. Before that, we had mostly kind of SMEs, scale-ups, mid-market clients. And now we've really kind of hit that sweet spot and got numerous enterprises. And that's just really helping us scale.
And how many countries do you operate in as well?
So we cover 170 plus countries. So our model is unique. So we have on-the-ground experts around the world. So we've hired people in Brazil, in South Africa, in the US, in the Philippines, in India, and so on. So we've got a pretty global team. Remote works obviously helps with all of that. And then we also have on-the-ground experts globally. So lawyers, tax specialists, accountants. We've built up a community. They're effectively an extension of our team. So we've trained them up on how we work, how the platform works. They plug in and they can offer those services through there. So it's been a unique way for us to effectively get presence globally overnight without having to set up entities ourselves all over. And if we need to, we're the experts in it. So we know we can do it.
And what's been your proudest moment so far?
I guess I haven't had time to think, I think the problem when you're a founder is you're always trying to look at the next thing. So you're looking at everything in milestones. Let's build a product. But the product's never complete. So you're like, okay, it serves this client's given this feedback, or this user wants this. And do other users want that? And then you keep building. And I don't know if it's a bad habit or if it's a good habit and it's something that all founders do or not, but I'm always looking at what's wrong versus what's gone well. And I think it is important to stop and reflect and say, we have achieved this, we have achieved that. I mean, I don't want to say the fundraiser is my proudest moment, because a fundraiser is a means to an end, right? The goal is to get money to grow the business. If the business doesn't grow and you wasted the money, then it was pointless. Not pointless, but it hasn't achieved anything. So it's all good when we congratulate people for raising funds, but I think that's just the beginning. It's how you effectively, utilize those funds. But the reason why I would say it's still a good thing to do is it's external validation. You've gone out, people have seen your business who are experts. They've compared it to lots of other businesses in the market. We did it in 2022 when, hardly anyone was getting investment and it was a tough environment. So I'd say that was a good achievement. And I think the fact that before the fundraise, I'm a lawyer, like you say. I studied history, put together a team and built a product, which a lot of people were convinced had been around for years and was a sophisticated product. And maybe we'd already had funds, which we hadn't. So I think, just building a team of really good people, making global connections and having a product, I think the whole concept of everything we've done today, I'd say I'm quite proud of, rather than any one specific thing. But for me, it's just the beginning. I don't know if I'll always think like that. It'll always be the beginning because there's always so much more to do.
So if today is the beginning, what's the target for, say, 10 years' time or 15 years' time?
Yeah.
Where do you want this company to go to?
So if you look at kind of incumbents in the market today, if anyone wants to expand internationally, people don't think I need a tech solution. They think, how do I do it? I need an expert. I need a lawyer. I need an accountant, whether it's in different countries or whether you use an international firm. So in 10 years, I want everyone to think, if I need to do anything global, Centuro Global, that's where I go. So I want it to become the platform that people know as a solution for all their challenges anywhere in the world to do with legal, immigration, tax, and so on. Anything, if you want to succeed anywhere in the world, we want that to be the platform. And I think if I can build up a bigger global team and, just be like the fifth player of the big four, become the big five, for example, something like that, I think that would be a pretty good achievement.
So we're going to have to go to the quick fire questions now. Thank you so much for sharing your story so far. So the first one is, who are 3 British Asians that you'd love to spotlight today that you think the audience should be paying attention to?
So I'd say one is Yutishtan Ranjan. So he's a partner at Octopus Ventures, and he started off as an engineer, went into private equity, investment banking, and now he's in VC. And I think, he's doing a lot of great work trying to, find great opportunities in the market. And I've known him for a long time, and he started sharing a lot of content on LinkedIn, and he's really trying to give advice to people on how you pitch to VCs. And not just, there's so much advice out there. A lot of it's quite generic, and he goes into real depth around metrics and traction and data and the data you need to really close certain rounds. So shout out to Yutish. Then I would also shout out Kush Birdie and Lena Birdie. So I went to law school with Lena. She was in my class during the GDL, and we both went on to become lawyers, and she's now set up a law firm with her husband Kush, and they're making a splash, and it's quite difficult to set up a law firm, especially from scratch. And they're trying to make it modern, have great branding, and they're going out there and trying to do things in a different way. They help startups, they help scale-ups, they help lots of different industries. So shout out to both of them. And a third one, I don't know if that counts as 3 because there's 2 of them.
They can count as 1 for this.
Okay. And the third one, I'll shout my dad out. So
what's your dad's name?
Zafar. He has a business. He helps companies, particularly in the Middle East. So he does a lot of, he calls it government liaison. So if you want to, do business in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia and other countries, he can help companies navigate the landscape, the regulations and so on. So he's also been a big help and a mentor for me.
So if people have enjoyed listening to your journey today and want to find out more about you and your company, where should they go to?
LinkedIn's probably the best place. So if you search Zain Ali, Centuro Global, I'll probably come up. I haven't posted for a while, but I like to post on LinkedIn, share thoughts. So I'm always open to receiving messages and so on.
And is there anything that you need help with right now that maybe the audience could help you with?
Well, I think like any company, number one goal is always to get more users, more clients. So if anyone thinks anything has resonated today and, there's any partners they could introduce, potential companies they think could utilize support with, international expansion, then would love any introductions.
And thank you so much for coming on today. Any final words for the audience?
Well, thanks for having me. And final words, I would say, anyone who wants to start a business, it's not an easy thing to do. So, make sure you think it through really carefully. But when you do it, number one kind of thing to bear in mind is the power of a network and a community and people to support you. So get out there, network, message people on LinkedIn, meet people, get advice. And there's a whole host of, founders and people who are really willing to give back and support you.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for listening. It means a huge amount to us, and we don't think you realize how important you are.
because if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, if you leave us a 5-star review, it makes a world of difference. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here, to inspire, connect and guide the next generation of British Asians, if you do those things, you can help us achieve that mission, and you can help us make a bigger impact. And by doing that, it means we can get bigger guests, we can host more events, we can do more for the community. So you can play a huge part. So thank you so much for supporting us.